Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 18th episode of our podcast series, Power Dynamics Unveiled. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a fascinating exploration of Law 17 from Robert Greene's seminal work, The 48 Laws of Power. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. If you've been following this series, you know we've been dissecting Greene's laws one by one, uncovering their depth and relevance to modern life. If you're new here, don't worry. This episode stands on its own, but I encourage you to check out our previous discussions for a fuller picture. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes on power, influence, and human behavior. As someone who, spent years studying the dynamics of power, both in theory and in practice, I found Law 17 to be one of the most intriguing and, frankly, unsettling principles in Greene's book. When I first read the 48 Laws of Power, this law struck me as both a psychological weapon and a strategic art form. It's about wielding unpredictability as a tool to maintain control, and it's a concept that resonates deeply in today's fast-paced, competitive world. In this episode, I'll walk you through the essence of Law 17, share practical tips for applying it thoughtfully in your life, and compare it to insights from other disciplines like psychology and sociology. I'll also weave in expert quotes to ground our discussion in authority. By the end, you'll understand why cultivating an air of unpredictability can be a game changer in navigating power dynamics. Let's get started. Law 17, as Robert Greene articulates, advises us to keep others in suspended terror by cultivating an air of unpredictability. Now, the phrase suspended terror might sound dramatic, but don't let it scare you off. At its core, this law is about leveraging the human fear of the unknown to maintain influence. Greene argues that when people cannot predict your actions, they're left off balance, unable to strategize against you effectively. This uncertainty becomes a form of power, as it forces others to focus on you, to anticipate your moves, and to remain in a state of heightened alertness. When I first encountered this law, I was working in a corporate environment where predictability was almost a currency. Colleagues who followed strict patterns, always responding to emails within an hour, always siding with the same faction in meetings, were easy to maneuver around. But there was one manager, let's call her Sarah, who embodied Law 17 without even knowing it. One week, she'd champion a bold new project. The next, she'd quietly observe, offering no opinion. Her unpredictability made her untouchable. No one could pin her down, and that gave her an edge in negotiations and team dynamics. Watching her, I realized that predictability can be a liability, while ambiguity can be a shield. Greene draws historical examples to illustrate this law, like the enigmatic maneuvers of figures such as Louis XIII or Machiavelli's prince. These leaders thrived by keeping their intentions opaque, ensuring that allies and enemies alike remained guessing. The psychological mechanism here is simple yet profound. Humans crave certainty. When that certainty is disrupted, we become preoccupied with the source of the disruption. As Greene writes, unpredictability is a weapon of power because it creates a vacuum that others rush to fill with their own assumptions. To deepen our understanding, let's turn to an expert perspective. Dr. Robert Cialdini, a renowned psychologist and author of Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, touches on a related concept when discussing the principle of scarcity. He notes, when something is uncertain or difficult to predict, it becomes more desirable and commands more attention. While Cialdini's focus is on persuasion, his insight aligns with Law 17. Unpredictability heightens your presence in others' minds, making you a focal point of their attention. So, why does Law 17 matter today? In a world dominated by social media, workplace politics, and global competition, power dynamics are more complex than ever. Whether you're a CEO, a freelancer, or a student navigating group projects, the ability to keep others guessing can give you a strategic advantage. But let's be clear, this isn't about being erratic or chaotic. Law 17 is about controlled unpredictability, strategic ambiguity that serves your goals. Reflecting on my own journey, I've seen how predictability can undermine authority. Early in my career, I made the mistake of being too transparent with my plans. I'd share my strategies openly, thinking it would build trust. Instead, it made me vulnerable. Colleagues anticipated my moves and used that knowledge to their advantage. After reading Greene's book, I began experimenting with Law 17. I started varying my responses, sometimes staying silent in meetings when others expected me to speak, or shifting my approach to projects without broadcasting the change. The result? People paid closer attention to me. They couldn't take me for granted, and that shift in perception translated into greater influence. This law isn't just for corporate warriors. It applies to personal relationships, creative pursuits, and even public personas. Think about artists or influencers who thrive by keeping their audience guessing. Beyoncé dropping a surprise album, or a YouTuber pivoting to an unexpected niche. These moves captivate because they defy expectation. As sociologist Irving Goffman once said, "The self is a performance, and unpredictability is a way to keep the audience engaged." Now let's get practical. How can you apply Law 17 in your life without coming across as erratic or manipulative? Here are some strategies I've found effective, drawn from my own experiences and Greene's teachings. I'll avoid numbering them to keep the flow conversational, as you, our listeners, prefer a narrative style. First, consider varying your routines. If you're in a professional setting, don't always follow the same playbook. For example, if you're known for being the first to volunteer for tasks, occasionally hold back. Let others wonder why you're staying quiet. This subtle shift can make people reevaluate your role and influence. I tried this during a team brainstorming session once. Instead of leading the charge as usual, I listened intently and only chimed in at the end with a single, well-thought-out idea. The room's attention shifted to me, and my contribution carried more weight because it was unexpected. Another approach is to modulate your emotional responses. If you're typically calm and composed, an occasional display of passion, or even restrained anger, can be disarming. The key is authenticity. Don't fake emotions, but choose when to reveal them. I recall a negotiation where I deliberately let my frustration show after weeks of measured responses. The other party, caught off guard, became more conciliatory, eager to regain my usual calm demeanor. You can also use silence strategically. Silence is a powerful tool for creating suspense. Instead of filling every moment with words, pause. Let others grapple with the uncertainty of your thoughts. I've used this in one-on-one meetings, pausing after a colleague's question to let the silence linger. It's amazing how quickly people rush to fill that void, often revealing more than they intended. Finally, embrace strategic ambiguity in your plans. Don't always broadcast your next move. If you're working on a project, share just enough to keep others engaged, but withhold the full picture. When I launched a side hustle a few years ago, I told colleagues I was exploring new ventures without specifying what. Their curiosity kept them checking in, and that buzz helped me build momentum. A word of caution. Law 17 requires balance. Unpredictability should never devolve into unreliability. If you become too erratic, you risk losing trust. As leadership expert Simon Sinek warns, consistency builds trust, but occasional surprises build fascination. The art is in blending reliability with moments of unpredictability to keep others intrigued without alienating them. To fully appreciate Law 17, let's compare it to insights from other fields, particularly psychology and game theory. These disciplines offer a lens to understand why unpredictability is so potent. In psychology, Law 17 aligns with the concept of cognitive dissonance. When people can't predict your actions, they experience discomfort, as their mental model of you is disrupted. This discomfort compels them to pay closer attention, trying to resolve the dissonance. Psychologist Leon Festinger, who developed the theory of cognitive dissonance, noted, "When faced with inconsistency, people are motivated to reduce the tension it creates. By being unpredictable, you create that tension, positioning yourself as the focal point of others' efforts to make sense of you." Game theory offers another perspective. In strategic interactions, like negotiations or competitions, unpredictability can disrupt opponents' strategies. Consider the concept of a mixed strategy in game theory, where players randomize their moves to avoid being outmaneuvered. Law 17 embodies this principle. By keeping your actions unpredictable, you prevent others from developing a counter-strategy. Nobel laureate John Nash, whose work revolutionized game theory, emphasized that unpredictable strategies can dominate in competitive environments. Greene's law takes this idea into the realm of human relationships, where ambiguity becomes a tactical advantage. Even philosophy offers parallels. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre explored the idea of freedom through ambiguity. Sartre argued that humans are defined by their ability to act unpredictably, defying deterministic expectations. While Law 17 is more pragmatic than philosophical, it taps into this notion. By refusing to be pinned down, you assert your autonomy and influence. As powerful as Law 17 is, it's not without challenges. Cultivating unpredictability requires self-awareness and emotional intelligence. You must know when to push boundaries and when to pull back. Overuse can make you seem untrustworthy, while underuse can render the strategy ineffective. I've learned this the hard way. Once, in an attempt to be unpredictable, I shifted my stance on a project too abruptly, confusing my team and eroding their confidence in me. It took weeks to rebuild that trust. Ethically, Law 17 walks a fine line. Keeping others in suspense can feel manipulative, and it's important to use this law with integrity. Greene himself acknowledges that power dynamics can be a double-edged sword. My approach is to use unpredictability to protect my autonomy and influence, not to harm others. For example, I might use silence to maintain leverage in a negotiation, but I'd never use it to gaslight or destabilize someone unfairly. As we wrap up this 18th episode of Power Dynamics Unveiled, I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for Law 17 and its relevance to modern life. Keeping others in suspended terror through cultivated unpredictability isn't about fear-mongering. It's about commanding attention and influence in a world where predictability is a liability. From my own experiences, I've seen how strategic ambiguity can shift dynamics in my favor, whether in the boardroom or in personal interactions. By varying your routines, modulating your emotions, using silence, and embracing ambiguity, you can harness this law to navigate power dynamics with finesse. We've also seen how Law 17 intersects with psychology, game theory, and philosophy, reinforcing its timeless wisdom. Experts like Cialdini, Festinger, and Nash remind us that unpredictability is a universal principle of influence, rooted in human nature. But as with all power strategies, balance and ethics are key. Use Law 17 to empower yourself, not to diminish others. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. If you found this episode insightful, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Have you ever used unpredictability to your advantage? Or have you encountered someone who embodied Law 17? I'd love to hear your stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Until then, keep navigating the world with wisdom and strategy.